Welcome back to Cinema Recaps. Today I'll introduce a 2013 comedy crime thriller titled The Family. Spoilers ahead, so watch out. Mafia hitman Rocco coldly murders an Italian family of 4, believing them to be the Manzoni family. He cuts off the father's finger and sends it to Mafia boss Don Lucchese, who's currently in prison. But after fingerprint testing, they confirm Rocco killed the wrong people. Rocco is ordered to keep searching. The real Manzoni family is leaving the USA to live in Normandy, France, under the FBI's Witness Protection Program. The family consists of the father, Giovanni, also a mafia boss, his wife, Maggie, their 2 children, Belle and Warren, and their dog, Malavita. The reason they're constantly moving and changing names is because of Don Lucchese, who many years ago tried to kill Giovanni, seeing him as a rival. Giovanni fought back by snitching on Lucchese to the police, sending him to prison, and now Lucchese's men are constantly hunting the family for revenge. The family arrives at their new house in the middle of the night. After turning the power back on and starting a small fire, Giovanni pretends to inspect the house. But in truth, he takes a body out of his trunk and buries it in the backyard. The next morning, everyone prepares for a new day in their new lives. Maggie walks around town to see if there's anything interesting. Her worst fears are confirmed by the waitress at the cafe where she stops. It's a small town with little to do. Then, she stops by a convenience store to buy essentials, overhearing the cashier and some customers insulting Americans, assuming Maggie won't understand. Because they're speaking French, she gets furious. She grabs some alcohol and a gas tank from the shelves and throws them in the storeroom. Then she lights a match and tosses it in. She quickly pays for her groceries and leaves the market just before the place explodes. Afterwards, she has lunch at a fast food place, drawing attention as she noisily drinks her soda. Then she goes to the church and befriends the priest. Belle and Warren start at their new school, and Warren quickly gets into trouble with some bullies. He was clever, irritating them, who beat him up in the bathroom after he sassily talks back to them. At lunchtime, he meets his sister and shares the info he's already gathered about who's who at school, as he's planning to start a small mafia group there. After school, Belle starts walking home, while a car with 4 teenage boys follows her and asks her to hang out. At first, Belle refuses, but later, after getting lost, she decides to accept their offer to drive her home. However, instead of taking her home, they take her to a lake where teens usually hang out. Belle asks to be taken home, but the leader insists she stay to relax while lowering her dress strap suggestively. Not willing to let them get away with this, Belle returns to the car, grabs a tennis racket, and beats the boy up before warning the others to respect women more. Then she drives their car back home. Meanwhile, Giovanni goes to the gate to smoke a cigarette, something he isn't supposed to do. He quickly notices FBI agents hidden nearby to keep an eye on him and decides to go back inside to check the garden shed. After tossing out a bunch of junk, he finds a typewriter that still works. He thinks it's time to write his memoir, describing how he took over the family business started by his grandfather decades ago. Taking a break, he meets his neighbor through their adjoining backyard and invents a story about being a writer when asked what he does for a living. That evening, while the family has dinner, they are visited by FBI agent Robert Stansfield, who is in charge of their case. After approving Giovanni's writer story, Stansfield asks about a shop owner who recently disappeared. Giovanni claims he knows nothing, but in reality, he killed him for selling him fresh seafood that was actually frozen. That's the body he had in the trunk when he arrived. Stansfield warns him not to get into trouble, and before leaving, informs him that the FBI agents assigned to protect him from the house across the street are De Sicco and Mimor. Giovanni later joins his wife in bed and has a nightmare about the barbecue party he threw years ago, which was when Lucas chose to strike. The next day, when Giovanni gets too distracted with writing, Maggie demands to know what he's writing about and freaks out when she hears it's a memoir, fearing it could bring them big trouble. She brings a tray of food prepared especially for De Sicco and Mimo and heads out to take it to them after asking Giovanni to check the tap water because it's coming out brown and the plumber she called hasn't shown up. At school, Warren starts forming connections with the right people, using information and stolen goods to make them work for him. Meanwhile, Belle had to beat up a girl in the bathroom for stealing her pencil case. She also spots a handsome guy in the cafeteria, and Warren tells her he's on Rye, a college student acting as a substitute teacher for math. All the girls at school want him, so Belle has lots of competition if she wants to go after him. But Belle has a plan. She approaches Henri after class and asks for private math lessons, which he accepts. Meanwhile, Warren confronts his bullies outside school and beats them up with help from his new connections. Back at the house, the plumber arrives over 40 minutes late, annoying Giovanni and worsening his mood. When the plumber unnecessarily suggests changing all the pipes, Giovanni beats him up with tools he finds in the basement. Then he puts the body in the plumber's van and drives him to the hospital. The doctor there is baffled, wondering how the man could have so many fractured bones from simply falling down the stairs. Meanwhile, Rocco finds the family of the seafood shop owner and kills them for not having information on Giovanni. Giovanni continues his memoir, recounting how he used to take good care of his old neighborhood back in Brooklyn. In the evening, Maggie scolds him for what he did to the plumber, and Giovanni fires back by reminding her of the explosion she caused at the convenience store, talking about her obsession with fire. This excites Giovanni, and they become intimate on the couch. Over the weekend, the family hosts a barbecue and invites the neighbors, even though they don't like the idea. But Stansfield insisted to help them blend into the community. Maggie asks Belle about Henri, whom she invited, and reminds her to use protection. Belle reassures her mum that she won't have a quickie in some classroom. She'll choose the right time and place with the love of her life. Warren arrives with various sodas and tells his mum to stop making French food and serve American dishes instead, because that's what the neighbors expect. He's right. The neighbors show up to see the eccentric Americans and enjoy their weird food. Even DeSicco and Mimo are allowed to leave their watchroom to join the fun. The only one missing is Giovanni, whom Belle finds in the garden shed. Writing his life down feels like staring in the mirror for hours, and he realizes he regrets not being a better father and putting his family in tough situations. However, Belle doesn't agree and tells him she considers him the best dad ever. Now, in a better mood, Giovanni joins the party but gets irritated again when neighbors try to teach him how to start the grill. He imagines all the ways he could torture them for being rude, but thankfully, before he does anything foolish, Stansfield arrives to interrupt him. The two men talk privately, and Stansfield informs Giovanni that people in the White House are concerned about his book because it could cause trouble for many. Giovanni assures him that he's writing it for himself and doesn't plan to release it. Stansfield adds that Giovanni snitching on Lucasi was the best PR the FBI ever had, and nowadays, more members of Giovanni's old Mafia gang are giving up information for protection in exchange for safer lives. As the party ends, Belle is disappointed that Andre didn't show up. The next day, Giovanni visits the mayor to discuss the brown water issue. The mayor has no solution, and Giovanni imagines beating him up but leaves without causing trouble. He next visits the water company, confirming the water is already dirty when it reaches their reserves, and a worker hints at the cause, a local fertilizer factory. Giovanni visits the factory, and when the boss proves unhelpful and rude, Giovanni ties him to the back of his car and drags him until he's ready to confess. The man explains how to find the turbine that must be deactivated to get clean water. After getting the info, Giovanni leaves him in the middle of the road with his bike, threatening to cut off his private parts if he tells anyone. Returning home, he finds Stansfield reading his manuscript, who likes it but still scolds Giovanni for writing it. Meanwhile, Maggie continues visiting the church, and the priest convinces her to confess, promising confidentiality. However, what she reveals is so disturbing that it haunts the priest for a week, and he forbids her from entering his church again. At school, Warren forgets to submit an article for the school paper as promised. With only 5 minutes left to hand something in, he ends up quoting Lucasi from when he met him as a child. The newspaper passes from hand to hand throughout the school, even ending up on flights and as packing material, eventually reaching Lucchesi in his prison cell. The old man immediately recognizes the quote and sends his men to Normandy to find Giovanni once and for all. After class, Belle visits Henri, her classmate, and they end up making love against the door after she locks it. That evening, Giovanni receives a call from a neighbor who attended the barbecue, inviting him to a monthly community film event where they watch a movie and discuss it. Since the next screening is an American classic, they want Giovanni there to guide the discussion with his expertise as a writer. Giovanni accepts, and since the FBI listens to all his calls, Stansfield shows up a few minutes later to tell him what a bad idea it is. Giovanni disagrees, thinking this is a great way to show they're fitting in, and convinces Stansfield to come to the event with him. The following day, Warren's violent and criminal activities are discovered by the school board. He rushes home to grab money and fake IDs, planning to escape to Paris and start his own illegal business, just like his father did at 13. Before leaving, he says goodbye to his sister, who's depressed because she's fallen in love with Henri, but to him, she was just a fling, and now he's graduated and moving to Paris. Giovanni leaves a doll in his seat so the FBI thinks he's home, then sneaks out to plant a bomb on the turbine causing the brown water. Afterward, he meets with Stansfield, and together they go to the film event where they discover the movie is Goodfellas. Stansfield thinks this is an even worse idea now, but Giovanni points out that leaving before the movie starts would look suspicious. When the movie ends, Giovanni is asked to share his insights on how accurate New York life is, and he can't help but tell stories from his own Mafia life. The audience thinks it's fictional, But Stansfield is worried, thinking Giovanni is out of control. He calls DeSicco and Mimor, instructing them to gather the family and initiate Plan B. Meanwhile, Warren is at the station waiting for the train to Paris, and Belle is on a rooftop calling Henri, threatening to kill herself if he doesn't take her back. At that moment, both siblings spot a group of Mafia hitmen arriving in town, so they decide to go back home to warn their parents. Warren tries calling them, but gets no answer because Maggie couldn't reach the phone in time. The hitmen kill everyone in the police station and use their records to locate Giovanni's address. They also kill the firefighters and disable the fire trucks by slashing their tires. Meanwhile, Maggie goes to DeSicco and Mimor to ask about her children's whereabouts. Since her children aren't home, an explosion rocks the city. It's the bomb Giovanni planted, set to go off now to give him an alibi with the film event. Stansfield drives Giovanni back home, dropping him off with a warning to stay inside while he goes to talk to the police. Maggie also wants to return home, but as soon as she steps outside, she sees the mysterious men in black and hurries back inside with DeSicco and Mimor, trying to call the house, but Giovanni won't answer. The hitmen arrive and blow up the house, killing any neighbors who come outside to see what's going on. Fortunately, Giovanni survives by hiding in the garden after hearing Malavita bark in warning. Maggie wants to go to him, but when DeSicco and Mimor approach the door, they're immediately killed by one of the hitmen, who threatens to take advantage of Maggie before killing her. Giovanni arrives just in time, attacking the hitman and strangling him from behind while Maggie grabs a knife and stabs him to finish the job. Meanwhile, the other hitmen are busy searching the house ruins and arguing about whether to kill the dog, when Warren and Belle arrive, stealing weapons from the trunks of the hitmen's cars. A gunfight ensues, where Warren and Belle manage to kill most of the hitmen, except for Rocco. Warren is knocked out from the recoil, so Belle leaves him on the ground and starts running, hoping Rocco, now out of bullets, can't catch up. However, the old man proves surprisingly tough and chases her until Stansfield suddenly appears and runs him over with his car. With the hitmen dead, the family's identity has been compromised, so they must relocate to a new town with new names once again. However, Giovanni is happy to have shared his story with an audience, even if they thought it was fiction. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.